And asylum seekers in politics, our next subject is migration. And this comes after the leader of Ireland basically said, look, we're fed up now with 80% of all the people coming into the country trying to claim asylum here, saying they're refugees, are actually coming from Northern Ireland because they're escaping the UK because they don't want to be deported to Rwanda. And Rishi Sunak pointing at this going, well, look, even if a single plane hasn't taken off, even if every single migrant who could be on a plane is going to have legal cases against the government, costing the taxpayer millions, it is working because at least we're shoving some of them over the border back into the EU from whence they came. And so he said, well, look, if you've got such a problem with this, you can't have a hard border. You said after Brexit that wasn't possible. No checks on the border. Hullabaloo's going to break out. You said there'll be blood, there'll be tears. It'll be like the whole conflict, the troubles all over again. You can't be doing that. And then, of course, Ireland's turned around and said, we're going to send 100 police officers there to start checking who's coming into the country. And Rishi said, you can't do that, but how about you join our Rwanda plan? Well, to talk about this further, we can now get in touch with Andrew Allison, Head of Campaigns at Popular Conservatism. Popular man indeed, Andrew. How are you doing this morning? I'm
very well. You?
Yeah, I am good. Great to see you. So
it's good to see you again, and good to see you back on air on your own show as well.
Thank you. Now, Andrew and I have worked together in the past. He's a known entity to me. Now, Andrew, let's talk about this Rwanda scheme. I mean, is it actually working as a deterrent? Is this just Sunak looking out? Are these migrants who are just traipsing from pillar to post in the hope that they'll find someone somewhere to give them a house and some pocket money? Or is it that they're really scared about going to Kigali?
I don't think they're that scared about going to Kigali at all. I mean, Sunak has been saying that this has been a deterrent for, well, since he became Prime Minister, I suppose, for the last year and a half. And he was boasting, I think, at the beginning of this year about how the numbers of illegal migrants are now falling. And, of course, a couple of days ago, we had over 700 arrive in a day. Now, I'm sure some people don't want to go to Rwanda, but it could be that perhaps they don't particularly like the UK and they fancy their chances in Ireland.
Wish they'd stuck in the EU after all. Now, interestingly, the government made a big noise, didn't they, ahead of local elections. That story very deliberately put in newspapers that the first migrant has been sent to Rwanda. Whoa! Well done, Sunak. Turns out the guy was from East Africa, took the $3,000 and went home.
Well, exactly, yes. I mean, it's hardly a success. I mean, I initially supported the Rwanda plan because I thought it was going to be better than perhaps it is. And I certainly supported it through Parliament because I believe that those people who were opposing it were being very disingenuous about the whole scheme. But realistically, you've got to send hundreds of people to Rwanda for it to be a deterrent. Those planes have got to take off the ground. Now, Rishi Sunak said this was going to be in spring. A rather liberal interpretation of spring is now July, which we would regard as summer. But before he can go to the nation, I suppose, in a general election, he's got to prove that this Rwanda plan is working. And we can't just see, 10 or 15 people taking off on an aeroplane. We have to see hundreds of people heading there.
Right, indeed. Spring has sprung, the grass has risen. I wonder where their migrants' flights is. But do you think it's a good idea to say to Ireland, look, come and join this scheme? Because, frankly, Ireland as part of the EU pretty much have to go along with whatever the EU decide their policy is going to be, even though Ireland, much like us, is blessed with, being an island, essentially, blessed with a natural geographic boundary, which should mean it's better able to control its own borders. But alas, being in the Schengen acquis, so on and so forth, they're not in Schengen, I don't think, but being part of the EU means that they don't really get much of a say in how they control their borders, and anything that is done to tackle this sort of huge industrial level of migration into the EU, very often aided, abetted, funded, coordinated, corralled and choreographed by all sorts of ne'er-do-wells, including the Wagner mercenaries of Russia. Do you think if Ireland did join this scheme and the EU sort of said, well, look, we should give this policy a try, considering it's EU frontiers who are being breached and then the traipse of people across the continent end up in Calais and coming here, that could be a good thing? And actually, if Rishi Sunak does manage to persuade Ireland to get involved and his EU mates with them, that actually we might be able to start turning the tide on what's going on.
If Ireland got involved, then yes, I think you're right, Alex. Yes, but I can't see it happening. And for those of us who fought for Brexit for more years than we've cared to mention, and you and I are two of those people, we find this a rather delicious irony, don't we? That the Irish government was trying to predict more of the troubles in Northern Ireland. There's going to be more violence. There's going to be more killings. They did everything that they possibly could to thwart Brexit. And now that they're getting people across the border because they wanted the borders open, now that we're getting more people across the border, they're now complaining that they're getting more migrants into the Republic of Ireland. I think that's a rather delicious irony. It
is a delicious irony in many respects, but I think what's interesting, talking about sending police to the borders and Rishi Sunak saying, look, no way, you said no hard border, you said no checkpoints, you said that this was going to create huge amounts of unrest, and yet what Ireland seemed to be facing, and I think when you look around, it's not reported much in UK media, but when you have a little glance around the continent and see some of the protests happening in other cities, particularly EU cities, and indeed, especially in Dublin, you kind of start to think that Ireland is almost at the tipping point of potential insurrection if they don't get immigration under control.
Yeah, very much so. I think the population of Ireland, which is a small population anyway, has grown by over 1 million in recent years, and I can understand why Irish people are upset about this and annoyed about it. There is a movement in Ireland, we both know that, for Ireland to leave the European Union. Now, whether that will happen or not is another question. But one thing I think I can guarantee is that if the population of Ireland keeps on growing through immigration that the people don't want, the chance of Ireland exiting the EU becomes greater.
Yeah, well, it'd be interesting. I think a lot of countries now are thinking of exiting the EU, but sadly too many have really tied their hands behind their backs by joining the blimmin' euro. Very difficult once you're tied up in someone else's fake news currency to then extricate yourself from that. Allison, thank you ever so much, Head of Campaigns from Popular Conservatism.